It's the fiercest storm to cross the Caribbean for years, and it has Jamaica in its sights. Packing winds of some 240 kilometers per hour, Hurricane Matthew is slowly but surely making its way to the island, prompting evacuation orders that are not always being heeded.
Some persons do resist. So what we are trying to do is to get our citizens to comply in their own interest, which would certainly save resources having to be deployed in a time of emergency when it would be difficult to respond.
While Matthew's weakened slightly to a Category 4 storm, it's raised fears of economic devastation in the poor countries in its path, including Jamaica. In Kingston, residents are stocking up on fuel and food, taking no chances, with some forecasts predicting Matthew could be the most powerful storm to cross the island since records began.
The police car dog. Wash this bumper cloth out of Chima dog. Look up the road dog. Police turn over through my bike, everything gone. Look. This tree is a make out here. Look how car park up. Yeah, move. Park up, look how car, see there? Hit that, yeah man, see there?
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the deadly hurricane on the move, a Category 4, winds reaching 140 miles an hour. Tonight, authorities already issuing warnings right here in the U.S. The hurricane bringing drenching rain, powerful wind gusts. and a dangerous storm surge in the Caribbean. Flash floods already in Jamaica, people struggling to push cars through the fast-rising waters. Across Haiti, warnings of possible devastation to come, and just look at the size of Hurricane Matthew tonight. And from the space station this evening, this image just in, the eye of the storm so perfectly formed there. Ginger Z has the new models here, the possible tracks as this now heads toward the U.S. next. But first, ABC's Lindsay Davis in Haiti.
Tonight, Hurricane Matthew already deadly and closing in on Haiti.
The wind just started to pick up. The rain's getting harder.
Now packing 140-mile-per-hour winds, at one point the strongest Atlantic hurricane in nearly a decade. But it's the storm's slow speed, moving at just 7 miles per hour, that makes it so dangerous. We made our way into Haiti today from the neighboring Dominican Republic. The outer bands are already starting to bring heavy rain, and the worst of the storm is still hours away. Parts of the island could see more than 3 feet of rain, potentially triggering deadly mudslides. Making matters worse, 6 years after the disastrous earthquake of 2010 that left more than 200,000 people dead, more than 50,000 people here are still living in makeshift shelters.
As we know, we're not really prepared for the type of hurricane, but we're doing the best that we can.
And at this orphanage outside of Port-au-Prince, they've boarded up the windows and moved their more than 60 children to the second floor. The storm has already killed at least 4 across the region. In Cuba, the U.S. military has already evacuated 700 military family members from Guantanamo Bay. This man warns residents to evacuate. Long lines are forming for food and supplies. Worshippers at this church pray they'll be spared. And with odds increasing for a landfall in the U.S. later this week, states of emergency have already been declared from Florida to North Carolina.
And we won't gamble with people's lives and the livelihood of many people up and down the coast.
David, the entire region is bracing for what is being described as life-threatening rain. We're talking about potentially 40 inches of rain, which could be devastating for people who are still living here in some homes that are rather fragile, homes that will offer very little protection. It's going to be a long 24 hours ahead, David.
All right, Lindsay, you and the team stay safe tonight.
One of the most powerful hurricanes in nearly a decade is battering Haiti and the Dominican Republic tonight, and there is great concern that it could hit the United States later in the week. Hurricane Matthew, a Category 4, is packing winds as high as 145 miles an hour. Matthew is blamed for at least 9 deaths. The eye of the storm is navigating the windward passage between Haiti and Cuba. The U.S. Navy military prison at Guantanamo Bay is being battered. The U.S. has sent disaster teams to the region, including Jamaica, where we find Mark Strassman tonight.
Just after 7 a.m., Hurricane Matthew blasted into Haiti's southwestern tip. Punishing rains and winds of 145 miles per hour uprooted trees and swept away the coastal town of Lake Cay. Resident George Ely told us it was devastating.
Old houses, everything is gone. It's like a bulldozer just passed by. I can tell you it's a big disaster.
Matthew could dump 3 feet of rain on this rural part of Haiti, where many people live in shacks made of wood and concrete blocks. Here, blocked roads and a collapsed bridge in the south make it hard to know the extent of the damage so far. This storm piles another calamity on Haiti, the Western Hemisphere's poorest country. 6 years ago, a devastating earthquake killed more than 200,000 people. Aid worker Aaron Denkers.
Things were progressing and being rebuilt, but it was fragile at best. So something like this comes through and completely destroys all the progress that's been made.
Eastern Cuba is bracing for its share of Matthew's misery. At Guantanamo Bay, the U.S. Navy ordered the evacuation of 700 spouses and children of service personnel. Residents in Santiago began feeling Matthew's fury early this morning. Last night was terrible, this young woman says. The waves were enormous. I thought they were going to enter the house.
Matthew has been churning at sea as a Category 4 or 5 hurricane now for almost 100 hours. That's the longest since Hurricane Igor in 2010. And Scott, that has people living in its potential path on high alert from Cuba to the Carolinas.
Mark Strassman, thanks.
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the monster hurricane and its deadly impact already. And tonight, up and down the East Coast, authorities are already warning Americans to prepare for possible mass evacuations. Look at the size of this storm on satellite at this hour. Tonight, a direct hit in Haiti, slamming ashore at 145 miles per hour. Hurricane Matthew is a Category 4, a massive amount of rain. Rivers of mud filling the streets, people trying to get to higher ground. And tonight, the new track just in, showing the hurricane coming even closer to the American shoreline from Miami up through Charleston, Wilmington, Norfolk to New York City. Meteorologist Ginger Z is standing by with the timing of it all, but we begin tonight with ABC's Lindsay Davis in Haiti.
Tonight, the most powerful hurricane to hit Haiti in more than 50 years is causing chaos and panic.
This is Matthew! Pray for us! We are right in it right now!
Matthew made landfall in western Haiti just after 7 a.m. with winds of 145 miles per hour. The Category 4 storm now 700 miles across, but traveling slowly at just 9 miles per hour. Winds continue howling across the island, and the rain devastating. At least 7 have been killed in the region. This man making the dangerous decision to cross raging floodwaters. This bridge connecting the southern part of the island to the capital city collapsed, while this river threatens to destroy yet another of the few bridges leading to Port-au-Prince.
You can see the river absolutely raging. It's already 15 feet higher from where it would normally be, and still it continues to rise. Concern is so great that police have closed down this bridge, so people who are in this village are unable to make it to Port-au-Prince by car.
The poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, ill-equipped to face a major hurricane. Residents here still reeling from the 2010 earthquake.
After the earthquake, thousands of people built their homes here on this hillside. They have no running water, no electricity. The real concern now with all this rain, mudslides.
Another danger, tornadoes like this one, caught on camera east of here in the Dominican Republic. Matthew's wrath is now being felt in Cuba as it tracks north. This man says the waves were so loud they woke him up. The storm surge has already destroyed this home.
David, Matthew continues to wreak havoc here in western Haiti, the hardest hit part of this island nation. This down tree tells the story of the sheer power of the hurricane. It's going to take at least a week to restore electricity to this area.
Lindsay Davis leading us off from Haiti. Lindsay, thanks.
Mire, como usted ve todo se me mojó, se echó a perder. Necesitamos ayuda. Ayúdanos, Señor.
It's the worst Caribbean storm in nearly a decade, and Haiti has felt its full force. Hurricane Matthew hit Haiti as a Category 4 storm, bringing winds of 230 kilometers per hour, heavy rains, and surging seas. Flooding was rampant throughout the capital of Port-au-Prince. The only bridge linking the city to Haiti's southern peninsula has collapsed, cutting off the whole of the south from the north. In nearby Léogâne, trees were uprooted and houses blown apart.
Everything inside my house is wet. I've lost everything. The water took it. I won't be able to get it back.
More than 14,000 Haitians have been evacuated to temporary shelters. Aid agencies are concerned about the risk of disease as flooding worsens, especially in the most deprived areas of this, one of the poorest countries in the world.
We anticipate it will be quite catastrophic. We are hearing sporadic reports that there is catastrophic damage down in Haiti's southwestern region, but we don't have a great picture of that yet because the storm is still ongoing and we haven't been able to get teams out.
Matthew has already hit Cuba as it spins northward. Forecasters predict the hurricane could hit the U.S. East Coast around midweek.
The United Nations says Hurricane Matthew's brought with it Haiti's worst humanitarian crisis since the earthquake of 2010. Winds up to 230 kilometers an hour and heavy rain have created what's being called a catastrophic situation in places like Lekki. Up to a meter of rain was predicted, threatening mudslides and flash floods. Communications are down across most of the country. Because of that, there's no immediate information on casualties and the extent of the damage. The Interior Minister says damage to homes and crops is likely to be extensive. Tens of thousands of people in Haiti are still living in flimsy tents and makeshift houses following the quake 6 years ago, from which it's still struggling to recover. The US has already offered the use of some of its helicopters to help with relief efforts. The hurricane's expected to reach the Bahamas, Florida and the Atlantic coast of the southern US on Thursday.
In parts of western Haiti, stunned residents are wading through the remnants of Hurricane Matthew. The storm's torrential rains flooded the streets of Lekki overnight and left many people homeless.
My home was completely destroyed. I've lost everything because of the water, including all of my children's documents.
The United Nations is calling it the worst humanitarian disaster to hit Haiti since the devastating earthquake of 2010. And with communications knocked out in many areas, the overall impact may not be known for days. Many here say they need urgent help.
Our homes are completely destroyed. We've lost everything. We need help as fast as possible. We cannot be left behind.
Matthew is now moving north, but for the residents of Lekki, the storm's impact is only beginning to sink in.
CDN 77.
Estaba ahí en la casa cuando pasó, yo estaba en mi otra casa. Un deslizamiento de tierra se derrumbó.
Now to Eric Fisher, the chief meteorologist at our CBS station WBZ in Boston. Eric, where's this headed?
Well, Scott, the last time a storm Category 3 or stronger hit the United States, Twitter did not exist, iPhones did not exist 4,000 days ago. That's a record streak, but sadly, it looks like that may end. Matthew is strengthening again tonight. It's moving off toward the west. We have hurricane warnings that extend across a large portion of the Florida coast and tropical storm warnings that are farther inland, and they also extend down toward the Keys. And here's a look at some of the potential wind gusts as we head through the next couple of days. As we head into Thursday evening, stronger winds starting to approach the coastline already. Very destructive winds across the Bahamas. So we head into the overnight. Look at the winds now gusting over 100 miles per hour at the coast, and they'll work their way up the coastline. Big thing here is where exactly will that center go? If it's inland, it brings all that most destructive wind inland. If it stays just offshore, 20 miles could make a big difference here, Scott. And this will move toward the Carolinas by the weekend.
And it could still strengthen. Eric Fisher, thanks very much.
The United States is bracing for Hurricane Matthew, and it is a dandy. About a dozen people died as the storm hit the Caribbean. Now Matthew is headed for Florida and could make landfill in less than 24 hours. 2 counties in Florida have already issued mandatory evacuation orders. Florida Governor Rick Scott is warning residents to follow all orders from their local officials.
Our #1 priority is people, protecting life. The storm has already killed multiple people, and we should expect the same impact in Florida if people do not take this seriously. If an evacuation order is issued for your area, leave immediately.
Georgia and the Carolinas are already preparing for Matthew. Traffic in South Carolina was bumper to bumper with people leaving Charleston. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Typhoon Chaba is battering South Korea and Japan. At least 3 people have been killed and thousands of homes are without power. And these 2 storms, are they a coincidence or signs of a new trend in our environment? For that answer, we turn to distinguished conservation biologist Dr. Reese Halter. Dr. Halter, good to have you with us tonight. How rare is it to have 2 storms on the globe of this magnitude potentially doing some horrific damage?
Extraordinarily rare, Ed. Welcome to Climate Instability, brought to you by fossil fuels. I've never seen in over 3 decades a Category 5, the equivalent. Earlier this week, Chaba had sustained winds of 165 miles an hour with gusts of 200 miles an hour. Ed, that rips roofs right off homes. And tonight, there's a possibility that Matthew will amp up to the next level into a Category 4. What we're very concerned of is not that it's going to drive into Florida, which will be horrific. And let me remind the viewers, the storm surge is awful. There's a possibility that this Hurricane Matthew, could twist, turn after coming in, slamming into Florida, head back out to the Atlantic and cross back in to Florida and into the Gulf. This is unbelievable.
Okay. Well, this is a very rare prediction of the possibility of what this hurricane could do. And that graphic, I want our viewers to follow the red line. This is potentially a pattern that this hurricane could follow. How rare is this? And have you ever seen this?
It is somewhat rare, but let me remind you that hurricanes are massive heat pumps, sucking all their energy from overheated the Atlantic, which is around 85 degrees. The Gulf in parts is 88 degrees. So when they come into land, they lose that energy source, but the size of this hurricane, should it reach into the Gulf, it'll roar back up and then continue along and likely slam into Louisiana. All sorts of predictions are there. The reality is, in an overheating world, we got to expect a lot more of this, Ed.
All right, Dr. Reese Halter with us tonight. And again, Governor Rick Scott in Florida is telling residents to make sure they pay attention to local announcements and their local officials. Dr. Reese, good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of talk about Hurricane Matthew, but guys, we've got another monster storm going on in the West Pacific right now, and we're zoomed into southern Japan, some of the southern islands here. This is Super Typhoon Chaba, max sustained wind around 165 miles an hour with gusts up to 200 miles per hour. Now, you notice Okinawa there on the east side, okay? So we've got Kadena Air Force Base out there. Definitely some U.S. interest there. Okinawa seems to have been spared of the worst of the storm, okay? You got to keep in mind the strongest of those winds are very, very close to the center, right near that eye wall. But look at Kumejima, just a little bit west of Okinawa there. Took just about a direct hit from the eye wall, and it looks like they were affected by it for a pretty decent amount of time. Now, of course, it's still dark there, so we're still working on getting information out there. Haven't heard any reports of injuries or anything like that. This storm has taken a little bit of a westward shift in the forecast track, but still there's going to be a lot of rain. If I would say there's anything kind of different about the track as compared to a couple of days ago, the fact here that South Korea looks to be heavily impacted as well.
Our top story this morning, after slamming into Jeju Island, Typhoon Chaba is heading north, prompting typhoon alerts in Korea's southern port city of Busan and in Ulsan. The Korea Meteorological Administration says the cities are expected to see up to 250 millimeters of rain with strong winds of up to 30 meters per second. Around 900 ships have been evacuated from the port of Ulsan. The typhoon is forecast to pass Busan around noon today. Chaba has been pounding Korea's southern resort island of Jeju since late Tuesday, canceling and rescheduling scores of flights and cruise ship tours. Jeju is expected to see up to 400 millimeters of rain. More than 1,600 homes on Jeju are without electricity after trees collapsed onto power lines.
For the first time this year, Korea is feeling the direct impact of a typhoon. Typhoon Chaba is named after a tropical flower, but it's not nearly as delicate as its name suggests. Let's connect to our Hwang Ho-jun for updates on this storm and the path it's expected to take. So, Ho-jun, Typhoon Chaba, it's a big one.
You're absolutely right, Mark. As of 11 a.m. Korea time, Typhoon Chaba had reached Busan and is moving northwest at a speed of about 60 kilometers an hour toward the East Sea. Its maximum wind speed is around 126 kilometers an hour. It has weakened to a smaller-sized typhoon since Monday, when the U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center estimated Chaba had become a super typhoon with sustained winds at the time of roughly 265 kilometers per hour. However, it's still considered a powerful storm, and a typhoon warning has been issued across the south coast of the peninsula, including Jeju, Busan, and Ulsan. A typhoon advisory is also in place for most of the Gyeongsang-do and Jeollado provinces. Jeju has received the hardest blow so far as Chaba battered the islands throughout the night. Wind gusts in mountain areas were recorded as high as 200 kilometers an hour, accompanied by heavy rain, more than 500 millimeters so far. Now, due to the typhoon, more than 25,000 Jeju households suffered a power outage during the night, and one apparent fisherman went missing after falling off a docked boat. A crane at a construction site in Busan collapsed due to the wind, killing 2 people. In Yeosu, a ferry boat collided with the breakwater, and 2 crewmen were swept away by the waves, but were rescued by the Coast Guard within 20 minutes. All ship routes are suspended at this moment. And concerning air travel, about 6,500 passengers are stranded in Jeju International Airport, as more than 40 flights have been grounded since 7 a.m. Some 36 flights have been canceled at Kimhae Airport near Busan due to the typhoon.
And Ho-jun, it is unusual for Korea to experience such a strong typhoon in October. In fact, this is the first one in 3 years. Just how long will it take for this storm to pass? Well,
the typhoon is accelerating and weakening in strength as it travels into the East Sea. The typhoon's trajectory has it reaching Dokdo in the East Sea late this afternoon and then crossing the sea to Japan by Thursday morning, at which point it's likely to be downgraded to a tropical depression. However, as the heavy rain could trigger flash floods and landslides, both Korea and Japan are closely monitoring Chaba's progression. Back to you, Mark.
Cleanup operations are ongoing this afternoon after Typhoon Chaba swept through the southern part of Korea on Wednesday, leaving a trail of destruction. At least 7 people died and 3 are missing after the region was lashed by torrential rain and powerful winds. Lee Min-young starts us off.
The Korean peninsula is no longer under the direct influence of Typhoon Chaba, but the southern parts of Korea that were battered by the storm are still grappling with rescue and recovery operations. And more reports on the extent of the damage are still coming in. 3 casualties were reported in Busan. Among them is a construction worker who was killed after a crane toppled over, and an elderly woman who died after falling from the roof of her house. 3 casualties were reported in the nearby city of Ulsan, which was also slammed with torrential rain and powerful winds. The General Insurance Association of Korea reported Wednesday the typhoon caused more than $9 million in damages. More than 500 homes have been flooded and more than 1,600 vehicles submerged. Around 230,000 homes suffered power outages, and dozens of cultural properties were damaged. Almost 200 people from 90 households were forced to evacuate, and they are currently staying at local schools and community centers. Industrial plants were also affected by the typhoon. 2 Hyundai Motor plants in Ulsan and 20 other industrial facilities in the area were forced to suspend operations for a while due to the flooding. The storm, which has been downgraded to a tropical depression, is currently affecting parts of Japan. President Park Geun-hye has called for swift restoration measures to minimize the damage. The government also said it is considering designating the affected regions as special disaster areas. If so, local residents would be able to receive emergency relief and special administrative and financial support from the government. The city of Gyeongju was designated as a special disaster area following 2 powerful earthquakes that hit the region last month. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
We begin with Typhoon Chaba, reportedly the strongest storm Korea has seen in more than a decade. It has battered southern parts of Korea with violent winds and heavy rain, killing at least 4 people, leaving 3 unaccounted for, and flooding the country's main ports and industrial sites. Now, Chaba is expected to weaken to a tropical storm as it moves towards Japan, but on all the damage that it has left behind, our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Typhoon Chaba is receding from the Korean peninsula, but not after causing major damage and casualties. Chaba has claimed at least 4 lives, including an elderly woman who fell from the roof of her house and a firefighter who was on duty and trying to help people evacuate. It's also caused a number of accidents, including the collapse of a crane at a construction site in the port city of Busan. Not far away in Ulsan, a major industrial hub, flooding halted production at the Hyundai Motor factory, while residents downstream from a dam on the Taewagang River, which cuts across the city, were forced to evacuate so the dam could release water to prevent further flooding. The General Insurance Association of Korea says damages incurred from Typhoon Chaba are estimated at nearly $9.3 million so far, as some 980 automobiles were reported to have been submerged, and some 230,000 households have experienced power cuts. President Park Geun-hye urged swift restoration efforts and response measures to minimize further damages in the affected areas, while the Ministry of Public Safety and Security says it plans to come up with detailed plans for aid by the end of the month. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
또 차는 내려온다.
어머야, 어쩜 좋아, 세상에.
와, 이거야.
예? 세상에 이런 광경을 언제 보고 계십니까? 이야, 이게, 와이구야, 저 좀 봐라, 차 떠내려간다. 와이구, 이게 뭐. 아이고, 이게 바다입니까? 논입니까, 이게?
And now let's turn to South Korea, where Typhoon Chaba has battered southern parts of the country, and reports say at least 5 people were killed on Wednesday. The typhoon caused flooding in the country's main port, industrial cities and major factories, and dozens of flights in and out of the resort island of Jeju, which is a popular destination for Chinese tourists, have been cancelled. The country's largest port in the city of Busan is closed for the second consecutive day. Work in factories owned by Hyundai Motors in the city of Ulsan has been suspended after facilities were partially flooded. Authorities say 2,500 schools across the country are closed.